Расцветали яблони и груши, поплыли туманы над рекой. Выходила на берег Катюша, на высокий берег, на крутой. Выходила на берег Катюша, на высокий берег, на крутой. Hi, welcome to Boys Club, a podcast that focuses on femmes, they, thems, and queer voices. I'm going to be the host for today, Nico Doom. I'm Commissar Propaganda for Collective, and I'm going to be joined by other members of Collective today. First off, we have Lumpy. Hi, Lumpy. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. I'm not feeling 100, but I'm pulling through. I just had a little nausea, but so I am the commissar of operations for Collective, and we're here with Crazy too.
Hey y'all, Crazy 101 here. I'm doing very good today. Got to hang out with some friends of mine today and just get to hang out with more friends today. So I'm just doing real good today.
That's awesome. And we also have Ash here with us as well.
Hello. I'm good. I'm excited to be here. So
yeah. Now we have a really interesting topic. One that I think all of us are pretty well versed on. It's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit looser with structure. Going to be a discussion because of the fact that we are so well aware of this topic. It affects every single one of us. But today we are going to discuss misogyny, which in simple terms, misogyny is a hatred of women. But like most things, it's never truly that simple. Misogyny obviously is both a byproduct of oppression and an act of oppression. It moves outward. It's not just men that do misogyny. For example, misogyny can happen in communities like the LGBTQIA+. Women can perpetuate misogyny. It's just one of those things that, even though we know that the patriarchy existed before capitalism, because we live in a capitalist system, the structures of patriarchy are used to maintain class divisions and other types of oppression. And I think it's really important today we talk about misogyny because women play a very unique role in capitalism and by experiencing misogyny and not only being a worker, but also having to be the unpaid laborer who produces mainly the thing that capitalists value the least but need the most, other workers. And I also, one of the things we want to talk about is there's been a lot of, there's over the last few years, the last decades even, there's been a lot of rise in feminist rhetoric, particularly here in the West. But actionable changes, I would say, are pretty questionable. A lot of feminist rhetoric ignores the intersections of not only race, but impairment and class. And that's what we're going to discuss as a whole today. What is to be done? How men, women, non-binary people can unpack their misogyny, and what we as communists need to do to address the misogyny problem that bleeds into our action and organizing. So first off, the thing I'd like to talk about or ask is, anyone here has to share like their most recent or impactful experience they've had about misogyny. I'm sure all of us have something potentially to share. So whoever would like to go first.
My experiences with misogyny, just by almost at this point by necessity of me also being Black, usually fall under misogynar. But one thing that happens to me the most, like by far the most, and it jumps to mind first, is when, and it usually happens online, is when I'm talking to someone or say something to someone and they always think that I'm like being aggressive or very passive aggressive. And I just don't see that happen for other members, because usually at some point in the conversation, either before then or during that very conversation, it'll drop that like, oh, I'm POC, I'm a Black woman or something like that. And every single time, soon after that information is like released to the public or whatever, I'm always getting people being like, well, like I have a problem with this person being me. And they're always very aggressive. They're very passive aggressive to people. And I'm like, interesting how every other time I have spoken or every other time someone else has spoken, this never comes up. This is never an issue until it is like revealed that I am like a Black woman. And then suddenly now everything's aggressive, everything's snappy, everything's sarcastic. And it's like, no, thank you. No, thank you.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I actually understand that a little bit too, because I get that, not as, as a white woman. I get it because I'm older. I think I get a lot more like, you're insufferable, stuff like that when I'm talking and stuff. So I think that comes with what I was going to discuss. Is I feel like my the misogyny, like I experience lots and lots of misogyny. I experienced it in my workplace. I talked about this. I was groomed as a teenager. So I had like a lot of issues with men and a lot of different situations and stuff. But I was trying to come up with what I wanted to talk about here, and I was like, you know what? It's a little different for me because I am older, and I feel like I am experiencing a little ageism in a way sometimes. And then it's like, do women get ageism? And when I was looking it up, it was like, women do experience more ageism in a lot of ways. And one is just because, when they're older, it's, they're supposed to be looking really good and looking young and stuff like that, So I think, I get more of the just, you're aggressive, we don't like you, kind of attitude. So.
Yeah. No, I definitely understand. And Ash, did you have anything you wanted to share with us today?
Yeah, first of all, I've definitely seen that happen to both of you, Crazy and Janet, like 100%, and it's infuriating. I do get a lot of misogyny, I think, in the debate spaces, like a lot. But like specifically from like comrades, though, they do a lot of like, well, actually, to me, or I'll be like in the middle of like talking about like women's issues. Like recently I was talking about how with opposition, how the USSR had women's rights and it was an improvement. Sorry, the USSR had women's rights and it was an improvement from the Tsar. And I got a well, actually, from a comrade who is familiar with me. And he goes, well, they didn't get rid of patriarchy. And it's like these little passive aggressive sort of like, I know more than you things. Mm-hmm. And it's just super unnecessary for them to sort of talk over when it's like, we both know that we know this. So.
Yeah. No, I would say, like, as someone who regularly mods for your debate lives, I notice how quickly, whenever you have a moment where someone that you're about to start talking about the experiences and information you have, a male comrade will start requesting to come up, and I'm like, let Ash handle it. She's got it. Like, I know she knows what she's talking about.
They're always trying to save me, but if they ever stop talking, they would know that I actually know the same things that you do. So
yeah. One of my big things in is the white knighting. I do not like seeing that at all. I don't like experiencing it. I do not like seeing someone swooping in to save the damsel, I guess. I don't know what they think they're doing, but yeah, that's what it feels like to me. So that is one of my big hangups, is when people are white knighting. And that's what I see happen to Ash a lot.
Yeah, no, that was actually, sorry, and I didn't mean to interrupt. Like, I was going to share my experience was recently with a, friend, someone who I thought was a friend, someone who I thought was a comrade, realizing that their respect was pretty much negotiable, and that in a lot of ways they were babying me. And it's kind of like the opposite of what crazy experience is. And I know it's because of the fact that even though I'm non binary, I am still seen as a woman and I'm a white woman. And a lot of white women end up getting the opposite of that they need to be white knighted. That even though they did not come to me about these potential issues that could have harmed me, they still use the fact that they thought I could potentially be harmed as a defense for their goals and to basically use me as a prop. And I see that happen a lot for a lot of us here, especially when men have also not addressed their white supremacy.
Something about that, like the difference between like POC women getting are sort of adultified, I guess you can say, where white women get very babyfied. It reminds me a lot of Sojourner Truth's speech, and the part in particular, and it's the part that gets me like every time when I look over it, where she talks about like, oh, growing up, I always heard about how women would get lifted up over the mud puddles, or they would lay down their jackets so they didn't have to step around the mud. And she just goes, but no one ever did that for me, and I'm a woman. Like all of these, small gestures and make you feel more ladylike or something like that does not get shown to everyone. It just doesn't. And it really goes to show, because you were talking about earlier about like feminism, white feminism, a lot of these issues, people don't realize how much feminism intersects with race, class, disability, and things like that. And so when you bring up these topics, almost by necessity, you kind of have to bring up other things too, or else you're just not acknowledging like, the full spectrum. Like, for example, I think in a last episode, I remember we talked about transphobia, and how I have brought up like how Black studs for getting like discriminated against in women's restrooms. Like, that is misogyny. Like, that is both misogyny and racism wrapped up in one.
Yeah. I mean, it's misogyny can encompass a lot more than people realize, because it basically, because it falls into the other communities. You know what I mean? Like, trans men get misogyny at times because that's just what happens. But yeah, no, I just like through like what else I see online too is that there is a lot of talking down to the women too, or like what Ash is saying, like they have to. She's not saying anything wrong. They have to like correct her though, even if she's right. Like, that's what I see a lot. I've been doing even the podcasting and stuff like that. Like, I do it with another woman. I was doing a podcast, and it's super hard for a woman to actually do a big podcast and stuff like that, unless they have some backing in certain ways. And so we continue to do it, but like it's hard to. She's like an expert on Lenin, and probably knows more about Lenin than any man I ever met that speaks English. And yeah, she totally gets just kind of put in the corner. They always say about her voice. They don't like her voice. That's what they always say to her. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do notice. Like, I remember, I think it was last night for you, Ash, or someone came up and was just like, you look nice for a female communist. I can change you. Even when they want to debate us and they think we're wrong, they still want to find ways to devalue or value us.
Yeah, it's yucky. It's a weird. I dropped him right away. Obviously, I feel like it was going to some weird like white supremacist place or something was the general feeling that I got. Like immediately was like, okay, like what the fuck does that mean? Like this person is obviously like not safe. And then like a lot of times people will complain like, why do you drop so fast? Because we know the patterns. You've been doing it for so long. You've been having these conversations for so long. You can kind of predict most of the time, not always, but you can kind of predict where it's going, you know?
I think sometimes they're doing that to you, Ash, because they are trying to throw you off too. Because you are smart on the subjects you're talking about, and that irritates them. So they're going to try to make you feel uncomfortable. And that's something they do. Or you just, and then when you point out that this is, you know, misogynist or sexist or anything like that to them, they're like, no, I'm not, you know, I'm not that way. Like, no, they don't even know what they're doing. Like they claim they don't know what they're doing. So
I don't know. I think 90% of the people that come up are just terrible. So I'm always happy to drop. They're awful. They're all awful. Like, because like, who's going to come in and argue that communism is awful? Generally terrible people, you know?
Yeah, and I also notice quite often, it's like, you know, I go and listen to a lot of comrades' lives. And one of the things I notice the most, like with female ran or women ran lives, is how quickly when someone gets dropped, I hear or I see in the chat, oh, they're too emotional.
Oh, yeah.
So often.
Yeah. Yes. Very emotional, of course. Even when I notice this, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I notice when I am watching other women who debate, I noticed we very intentionally are flat toned, very intentionally. And if we leave that flat zone space at all, then we're emotional, we're bitches, get her out of here, you know? So.
Yeah, and
that's one thing I think I've noticed in the online space in general. I think we talked about it a tiny bit with Madeline Pendleton when they were on, is that people are so much more comfortable attacking women and femme presenting people online in general. Because I find every time there's some major discourse or major, like, you know, discourse, opinion that's been dropped, some hot take that has been had, if the person is femme presenting, you're going to hear about it for way longer and for a much longer time if the person is femme, rather than if the person is masked. And most people are like, oh, you're a dude, you're stupid, bye. And like, that's it. But then if it's like a woman, it's, you're ugly, you're a bitch, you had this, that. Like, I think I remember seeing a TikTok that Madeline made that was like, you know, when people, like, you know, she had a correct take about something yet again, and people were like, well, you're ugly and you look 30 and la la la. And she's like, I'm actually older, thank you. And then I just had to just take it in stride and just deal with that. And it's like, and it's so stupid because like what does that have to do with anything? It's just misogyny. And get back to what Lumpy was saying, it's also just ageism. Like, it's just like these, like, it's just so much worse for femmes online in general.
Yeah.
It is. It's hard because we want more femme presenting people to come up. We want, you know, all femme panels. We want like more femme. We want more femme presenting and non-binary people like everywhere in the leftist communist sphere. And it's just so hard because it's so discouraging, the amount of shit that people have to put up with to be heard, you know? So.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's like, this just makes me think about, you know, the fact that even in the online sphere, you know, the reality is like when women and femme presenting people experience so much more actual violence. Like the reality of like, I think it's like 1 in 5 women or 1 in 3 women actually will experience like some kind of assault within their lifetime. And it's like, you can't even basically log off in real life and get online and avoid that. You will still find that violence coming through no matter where you go.
Yeah. Yeah. It always finds you. But like, yeah, like, so what, like, even like there's some like stalking and stuff that kind of goes on too, and that they won't, they're like, oh, well, I would do the same thing to a guy, but you don't see them doing the same thing to a guy. You don't see them chasing them around, doing the same exact thing that they are doing. I mean, even when doing my parenti stuff, and we had our lovely friend drop in, and he's there to just harass, like that's all he was doing, and he was doing that in Ash's lives too before that. So then he whines because he ges blocked, but.
Oh, you mean men don't understand boundaries?
No.
Yeah. One thing something that just popped into my head, a lot of language that is used in left-leaning spaces and places like this tend to be very like sexually violent. And I don't like that because it just pops in my head where and it's always a male comrade, and they will be making a video, admittedly, and then they have some sort of like lukewarm take. Like let's be honest, not everyone can make star content. And all of a sudden, in like the middle of the video, they'll be like, "If you don't like what I'm saying, you can lick my balls." And I'm like, can we stop doing that? Like, please, for dear God, because like for me, I know they don't intend to sound that way. But it's just using sexual violence as a threat. And I think other people will do things similar where there's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to fuck these Nazis to death or whatever. And it's like, that's literally just rape. That's literally just RAPE. And we don't need to do that. We need to stop doing that. We need to stop acting like we're threatening people with stuff like that, because that is just not cool. That's not cool. That's not funny. Yeah. We really need to stop. And I just want to know, like, have you guys seen, like, I guess, violence like that? Just like casual violence that obviously tends to hurt women and femmes way more, really.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, there's been plenty times where I've been in these spaces. I remember one of them literally was like, I was just like, what? Because I was talking in the chat to someone in a live, and they pretty much were like, don't talk to me unless you're going to give me, and I to contextualize this, my profile pictures are usually me dressed up as a clown. So they said basically a context of a clown, genitalia. So I'm just like, I literally was just responding to you. And as soon as I responded to you, that's your response to me. That is, it's violent. And no matter what, like we all have to like deal with that every single day. And I don't think enough men comrades really realize that these are other barriers that we're up against that I'm not saying they will never experience, but most likely than not don't have to be a regular experience for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that like there's so much, it is much more covert now. Like I grew up with some when it was still, I'm sorry, my cat just went crazy. I grew up when there was some more of it being overt, like when I was experiencing at work, like when I went to go after doing 3 semesters of liberal arts and decided to switch over to engineering, and the dean of mechanical engineering told me to go home and bake cookies. Like, I mean, that was only 1990 when that happened. Like, I mean, it's long ago, but not that long ago, So like what I think that a lot of men think they are not, like they're either taking it as the jokes. I was saying the other day, like I was telling you guys, like my father always kind of, he's older. He joked about women, but not like he never, like I played sports. I did all this. He took me to sports. He always had this respect, but he'd say these little jokes every once in a while about women, because that was whatever, like what they do. And so my brother was over here and he said, oh, his 20-year-old daughter and his son, who is 17 and just got his license, he told his daughter she couldn't use the car and then turned around and told the son he could use it. Well, the reason was that the car's not working very well and he was only taking it like, a mile down the street, but she wanted to drive all around. But he turns to her and says to her, because he's the son, so he gets it. I'm like, don't do that. Please don't do that. Like, you don't have to perpetuate the sarcasm of my father onto your daughters. Like, you really don't need to do that. So, it's just in everything. And even if men just think they're joking and stuff, and a lot of times, like, for my generation, for Gen X, like, we're being born right out of the sexual revolution, and we're being told, like, well, that's the way, like, you guys, just use sex as a weapon. Like, we had all this, like, you were supposed to be like all sexual or something, and that was going to be our strength or something. Like, that's what I was raised on. That, like, not from my parents, but from the media, from, you know what I mean? Like, this is everything I was seeing. And it didn't make any sense to me. I was like, this is not stopping sexism. It's not stopping misogyny.
Mm-hmm.
Making women feel like they, like, oh, well, I'm all strong. So then when something happens to that woman, like it did me, when I believe, sexism has ended, and, I get groomed and, things happen to me, I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is not supposed to happen anymore. As a teenager, I was like, this isn't, no, we were told, this was done. Like, this is not going to happen. But I mean, you're a young teenager and that happens to you, and you learn fast that no, the sexual revolution of the 60s did not fix things. And it went from there. So, like, I think my generation got pretty screwed up with that. Like, we didn't address misogyny in any good way.
Yeah.
So
No, I think there's always this like double-edged sword of, the idea that, sexual liberties are both empowering, but at the same time, when misogyny is not fully addressed, that's underneath it, it can just turn into more exploitation, especially for young women and girls. So it makes sense, like, what, all of us, I'm sure, here can understand, like, why that's what you were thinking, but also what you experienced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, it just, for me, it's all like in this system, in like still having white supremacy and all capitalism and all those systems. We are never going to get rid of any of this stuff until those systems are gone. Like, it's just not going to happen. They all need to just go away. Like, and it's not going to happen under capitalism. I can tell you that.
No, absolutely not. Like, this makes me think of, like, this double-edged sword. We're also thinking about, like, these intersections that have to be addressed. I know I mentioned it on another podcast, but the reality of, like, as someone who is disabled and a femme presenting person, the fact that a lot of disabled women aren't even given the bodily autonomy to consent to stuff, whether that is relationships or even the ability to give childbirth, because of the fact that our bodies are so tied up with misogyny and capitalism that, a disabled woman's body is less valuable because of capitalism, whereas an able-bodied person's body is more valuable because of capitalism. And it's because the capitalist, in all honesty, wants an able-bodied worker. And if that means that they're going to be able to have an able-bodied worker, let's make sure that the able-bodied woman can have children while also making sure the disabled woman who's more likely to have a disabled child isn't able to have another worker.
Yeah.
And that's tied into capitalism and misogyny.
Yeah. No, definitely. It definitely, I saw, I would see that a lot so I have a rare disease and it is very like progressive. So like you would have, any stresses will bring it out. So of course, pregnancy is a huge stressor on your body and stuff. So, you would have the women that have this, like, because now, they're still of childbearing age. A lot of times my disease wasn't coming out until later on in women. But they're finding more and more like women in their 20s and 30s getting it now because it is a lymphatic. So it's when your lymphatic system's like being attacked and stuff. So, but you would see in the community, and I'm not going to say I didn't have a fleeting thought of this woman who was 36 and she was so desperate to get pregnant, and everyone's like, "You're sick. You shouldn't get pregnant." And I'm not like, I didn't say that. Like, I was thinking on it like, oh, I don't even know how she could do that. Cause like, I understand like for me, like what happened to me when I was pregnant and stuff like that. But I didn't want to, like, I didn't say anything to her. I didn't go to her, but I watched so many people, including women, tell her, that she shouldn't even attempt to get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
She was sick.
And that also...
Yeah, that should be, but I'm just saying that should be her decision. Like that should be her decision. My decision, knowing that I would have so much trouble, like I was not going to attempt, to have a child because I went through what I went through when I was younger in my 20s. So I just.
Yeah. No,
another thing. Oh, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. Please go ahead.
Another topic around misogyny that I see. There's not a lot of women in leadership positions, even in less leading spaces. I was just talking to my friend about this very thing earlier, and they brought it up. They were like, I don't know if I can name a local organization or even national organization off the top of my head immediately that has a woman at the helm. And they also brought up, and also on top of that, a Black woman. And so, it's like a lot of places, a lot of organizations, a lot of, chapters, a lot of parties that are left leaning in nature will still have a mostly male leadership, and then also mostly like white leadership as well, and not very diverse even amongst things like class or disability and things like that, or even gender identity or sexuality, unless it's like specifically a queer organization. And it's like, and it's just like one of those things where it goes into the exploitation of labor, obviously, but women's labor tends to get exploited a lot when in leftist spaces and even leftist history, where like a lot of women, I find that a lot of people that are also very just femme presenting tend to be a very big connective tissue in a lot of movements and local organizations, because the people that I learned the most about my other local organizations have been other women in femmes. But the people I see at the head of these organizations are almost always men or masculine presenting people. And it's always just so weird because it's like these people are literally the bread and butter of what keeps our movements moving. And they are nowhere to be found. Some of you like just hear, like, I think I told like Lumpy or Nico, one of you, that like I'm doing local organizing in my community around like this environmental issue. And my friend, they're going door to door, selling pamphlets, not selling pamphlets, but like giving out pamphlets about this event. And they found that the people that are by far the most interested were Black women, but they were also the most hesitant to actually like speak out about it with like an explicitly socialist organization. And we were kind of theorizing like, well, why would that be? And I think it was because like they just don't want the target on their back because they already know so much. And being in a position of both being a woman and also a minority, like you tend to get a lot of unfair flack, for stuff like that. And it's really, really, kind of sad in a way because it's like how Ash was talking about, we need more femmes. Like we need more women in femmes in these spaces, in the debate spaces, in the organization spaces. But they're like the number one set of people that just don't feel welcome. And it's really, really hard, really.
Yeah. I could see why people would be hesitant to come in. Like I don't think like a lot of organizations have done the work to be trusted, and what you're talking about is true. Like the majority of like historically movements, you said the bread and butter have been women, is true. Like you look at like the long-haired warriors of Vietnam, women being like half of the overall movement, Cuba, like every communist movement that has ever happened, women played a major role and did not get the credit. Like there are people who can't even name like a single communist woman, like at all.
Yeah, they got what? Angela Davis and Rosa Luxemburg. I think those are the people.
Those are the two I hear. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's some internalized. There's definitely a little bit with what Crazy was talking. There is some internalized, and I like you can't fault a woman for having internalized misogyny since it's so just out there and stuff like that. Like it's just taught to you. But I mean, it's probably hard for like the woman to like. We're talking about Ash, and Ash is up there trying to talk, and the interruptions she gets, the white knighting, hey, you're kind of. It wasn't even, her face wasn't on there. He was looking at her PFP picture. You know what I mean?
But and then it's like I see this happen more frequently to other women, to Black women, to Indigenous women, to trans women, especially. The way trans women are treated on this app is fucking horrific.
Yeah.
Always talked over, always just, I'm sorry, I can't even.
I know. And I want men to understand, I need men to understand that this is scary. It is scary for women to be in those situations. It is scary.
Yeah. It doesn't stay online. And I think that's kind of the thing that people are not understanding when we talk about this. We're not just talking about like an online space. Yes, we are online. However, a lot of times this shit comes into real life. Like people will find your address. People will weaponize the state against you. People will make false CPS reports if they find out that you have children because they can exploit that about you. You see? And it's like, yes, it's an online virtual space. Sure. But there are people who will try to find you. Like this oftentimes does translate into real physical violence. Like we see it in the news all the time that like, women are stalked by some guy that they met online,
Mm-hmm. And it's also like the simple fact of like, we've had this discussion when we were starting up Boys Club. We knew, and so one of the reasons I kind of wanted this to be a loose conversation because I wanted to push against the fact that when we started this, we all had this realization of we have to be on point because of the fact that we are women and femme presenting people. That every single man who watches this will be ready to pick us apart.
Yep.
And that's also scary that we are constantly knowing that because of the way that we are seen by men and other people who carry misogyny around, that they are waiting for our downfall. And I think that goes into that same violence, that same real life harm. The fact that every single thing we do, there are men who call themselves our comrades and our friends who are waiting for the moment for us to fail. And it's because they enjoy it. And I don't think enough men have really analyzed, why am I so happy to see a femme presenting person make a mistake? Why am I not quick to believe? I want information about why a femme presenting person said someone was harassing them online. Things like that. Like, it's because they have not unpacked that misogyny.
Yeah. But they like it to happen, I was going to say, because then they can swoop in and fix it for you too. Like that's one thing that they like to attempt to do too. And it's like, I get that it may seem a little hypocritical, like we get scared, we get this, but you have to allow a woman to be able to deal with it. Like, we have to be able to deal with it. If we need your help, we will come to you. We will come to you if we need your help. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I do think that some of like the white knighting that a lot of male comrades do also does tend to be unpacked white saviorism. You know what I mean? I do find that a chunk of them, again, happen to be our white male comrades. And I do think that a lot of that just comes from this sort of idea that they can just try to save everyone. And it's like, that's not really your job necessarily, because it's not about like coming to the rescue, being the one to convert people and all that. Like, this isn't a religion. Like, this is like real stuff. Like, this is real stuff that's going to affect real people, women, femmes, everyone included. And so when they don't unpack that misogyny, which I think a lot of it, because a lot of men still have not unpacked it. Like, they've unpacked misogyny in the sense of you should treat women equally, but they have not unpacked the misogyny of still believing that women in some way, shape, or form, or femmes, are lower than, men in some way. Like, they have not unpacked the misogyny that makes them aggressive towards things that are feminine. They have not unpacked the misogyny that is more, about looking down, genuinely thinking that, like, oh, well, you see, women are inferior, but we just don't treat them that way. Like this weird sort of like, it's true, but we just don't act like it. And it's like, no, it just isn't true. You need to know what the implications of that is, basically. And a lot of them have not unpacked that. And it's the same thing with white supremacy as well. Or there's a lot of people who have are in the process of or have unpacked their white supremacy who are still very much racist, if that makes sense. And so it's like, it's like a weird, it's kind of hard to pinpoint because it's very case by case, and it's very, and it's just the way that these things are very insidious and have been implanted into us since we have been children, like since we were born. But yeah, like a lot of it is just like a lot of these topics bump into each other because it's literally all coming from the same root of, we are not unpacking overall this idea of superiority and inferiority. And in this case, among gender or among sex or whatever case may be,
No, I mean, I was thinking, like, when you're talking about that kind of I try to reflect a lot on like the characteristics of white supremacy. And one of the things I thought of, like, we're talking about white knighting, was kind of like, this thing we're talking about, and paternalism. Paternalism is one of those 15 characteristics of white supremacy. And you see a lot of men in our spaces kind of automatically assume that paternalism role, and no one asked them for that at all.
Yeah. No, I definitely, I see what you're saying with that too. Like, they definitely, they'll come about like, you're safe around me, and then you're like, I don't know if I feel so safe around you, like, something like that, because of other things they're saying and doing. I'm not saying that this is, it's not every single guy out there, and it's not. It is. I get it's not all men, but it is. To a point. It is to a point, because if they're not calling it out, but they might not see it because they might not understand it as being misogynistic, but it definitely is a huge thing for, to like treat us like we're kids or something, or treat us like, like we can't handle being an adult or something. I don't know what it is. It's just it's just very annoying is what it is. It's very annoying, and it doesn't really help. And like I was saying, like I know this sounds like, okay, it's scary, but then we have to be able to do it. Like I know, like I'm putting out two different messages here, but it's true. Like we have to be able to handle ourselves, and then just be able to ask when we need the help. And that's something that women have to keep in mind too. You know what I mean? Like, don't let yourself get buried, because if you do need help, go ask for help. Go to women and ask them for help first. See if they can help you. And then, I mean, I don't know what it will do to you. It's hard. It's going to be a hard break, because the oldest oppression, I mean, it's the oldest oppression, and it's super hard to, get rid of hundreds of thousands of years of this now at this, or tens of thousands of years, I should say, of this now. So, it is something that we all need to work on, even from ourselves.
Yeah. No, not a single one of us. It's just like everything else. Unpacking misogyny is a continuous thing. We're always going to be just deconstructing it. Like, just to be completely blatantly honest, like one of the things that even as like a non-binary person who's femme presenting, because of society and my own internalized misogyny, get scared of aging. That's one of those things. Like, I know that I will still be a valuable human once I hit 35, but society has told me, and I've internalized the idea that once I hit 35, I'm too old, I'm not valuable anymore. And, I'm sitting here at 34 and I still struggle with it. I still go, I'm broke, I can't afford anything, but I need to make sure I get facial cream so I don't get wrinkles. It's just like, let myself age. And that's just one of those really small things where it's like, that is misogyny. That is me trying to fit a role that a patriarchy wants me to fill, and I should be able to unpack that.
Yeah, I kind of skipped that. Like I think I was telling you guys about my mother. Like I was trying to say she was 39 until my sister was like 38, and she's like, you can't be 38. And but for me, it was a little weird. I feel better about myself now than I did 20 years ago. That's when my illness started, when I was in my 30s. I got Lyme disease at 28, and it just kind of got worse and worse through my 30s. And I didn't think I was going to walk by the time I was 50. So when I hit 50, I was kind of like, yeah. So for me, I had a circumstance that, made me see it a little differently, but I also know I didn't want to age. I know back in my 30s, like I didn't want to age. So yeah, I mean, it's not easy, but I don't know. You just have to care about yourself a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like you have to just realize like you are you, and celebrate it, I guess. I don't know. I know I sound ridiculous saying celebrate when you turn 50. I don't know. It's an accomplishment. It is.
Yeah. No, it is. And it's like, I know for me personally, like it's important. I'm not saying like, oh, you're older than me, lumpy, I need to hear but it's like, it's important, hearing that you've been like, I got past this. Obviously you do so much work for us, and like you help us, and you're such a good comrade and friend. And, these things help, because in the end, I can think about the fact that all of us come from different aspects of life, and we deal with our own things, and a wrinkle or, my disability getting worse is not going to make me less valuable to the people that actually care.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Absolutely. I got it. I struggle with that too. I'm about to be 35. I'm struggling with that. I don't, you probably say, I try to kind of fake it till I make it. So at every opportunity, I'm just like, hell yes, I'm old. I'm struggling with it, but I'm like, I will lean all the way into that. I'm old. What are you going to do about it? You know? So I don't think it's necessarily the right way to go about it, but
I'm sure all of us will have our own ways of dealing with it. I know right now Crazy doesn't really have to deal with it. She's still very young, but
Yeah, I'm the baby of the group. I'm still in my like early 20s, so it's like I don't know what y'all are talking about. I'm young and drunk.
I got decades.
But yeah, I mean, like I don't know. I guess I don't know. Like I just try to deconstruct the idea of what is it called, like the male gaze. So it's like, yeah, I just be like, if I wouldn't care about a man saying that to someone else, like if someone's like, ew, you're old, and it's like, would I care about someone that runs around and calls women old as if it's a bad thing? No. Okay, so why would I care if they say it to me? Like it's one of those things where it's like, I'm what is it like? I'm rubber and you're glue, like like yeah, like you just gotta take it in stride, really, because like Lumpy said, like these people will just say anything to just throw you off, and it's not worth it to dwell on it at all because half the time it's not even true.
Yeah,
I know.
But it's hard though because we all grew up with misogyny, so it's hard not to take those things. It's hard not to take them. Like I've gone to people, like I've seen when Ash goes through things, and Ash takes some very, well, I'm going to say with grace, but I hear the things she says to me directly, so it's not very graceful. But in public, she takes them very gracefully, but I know because like I've experienced stuff online, even in like when someone was going at her and kept going at her. I had that experience before, and she's like, everything's okay, and I'm just like, I'm here. Like I'm just here. You know what I mean? It's hard because as a woman, you want to present yourself as strong and not vulnerable because they're trying to make you vulnerable, and that's what sucks because it breaks you down. Because you're like, I am strong. Like I mean, that's why I got into before they even called it mixed martial arts. I was doing mixed martial arts, and that was the reason I did. I wanted to get stronger. That's what I wanted. And, I felt that need. I felt like I had to. And so physically me getting stronger, helped me get through a lot of stuff. But, so you want to present strong, but, we all like have had so many screwed up things happen to us that it's hard to remain strong. So,
Oh, yeah. No, and I think it's like, it's just as important to be vulnerable because of the fact that patriarchy also tells men that they're not supposed to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And, we're kind of combating even our own internalized patriarchy by allowing ourselves to be vulnerable at times. I know I've always been a very emotional person, and I've always been devalued for being an emotional person because of the fact that I'm femme presenting. But, and it's like, I went through that phase where I became like, nothing can bother me. I'm going to be, non-emotional. And it came out in healthy ways. And I started to realize like, I'm reacting the same way that men react with patriarchy when they're told they can't cry. I'm getting angry and snapping at people for no reason. I'm getting into fights more. Like it's natural and healthy to be vulnerable and emotional at times.
I've told you guys, like I've told everybody in the world, but I have an issue with aggression, and it came out of what I went through. Like I was not an aggressive child, I definitely learned to be aggressive. It became a defense mechanism for me. So I don't like it. I don't like tapping into that fight. I don't like it, it's definitely good in certain situations, but like, I don't like it, that, I don't want it to come out to like, you guys or anything like that. Like I would never want to be that way. And so it is a battle because like it is like a total contradiction because you want to be strong, but not, you also can't constantly be tough because that is not solving anything either. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was going to say, oh, go ahead.
In my head, like just like one quick thing. I think this might be my last point. Also, mask presenting women, they get a lot of flack too from misogyny because I know like we've been talking about like women and femmes too, but like mask presenting women also too get a lot of weird, misogynistic flack from men in particular, especially along the lines of like the whole like I know for like lesbians they get it all the time where it's like, oh, if you're gonna be with a mask presenting lesbian, why not just be with a guy? And it's like, because that's not the point. That's not what that means. And one thing, it popped into my head because recently there was that law in the UK where like trans women, like they will literally have a certificate being like, I am a woman. And the UK is just like, no, that doesn't mean anything. You have to be cis from birth, whatever. And it's like someone like me, I think I spoke about this sort of thing before as like, being masked myself and being mistaken as like a guy sometimes, where it's just like when a lot of like the turf rhetoric we see happening in feminism now, which is also itself exaggerated misogyny, it ends up, it will, and it has already hurt more women, which is again more misogyny. And and it's one of those things where like if it's getting harder and harder for people to prove that they are literally just a woman, then what about the women that are cis but just don't fit into the gender binary, don't fit into feminine or masculine or either? There are a lot of people that are agender as well, or who are bigender, like one day they can be femme, next day they can be masked, and that's just how they are. And and it's just one of those things where it's like it's misogyny that wraps back around so fast that it just becomes even more misogyny. Like you're just hurting more and more and more women, and they tend to hurt women that have less access to be able to prove their femininity. Because it's like like when I think of, traditional femininity, I think of, like hair, makeup, nails, stuff like that. And it's like, that stuff is expensive. That stuff is very expensive. Like, I don't got the money to get a full set in my hair pressed. And plus, I don't want to. So it's like, it ends up wrapping back around and hurting just more women.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, with me having PCOS, and I'm not afraid to admit it, I prefer my face shaved, but I can grow a full beard and mustache. So, it's one of those things like, even though I'm femme presenting, there's a lot of times like, I know that if I didn't shave, I could go out and make a lot of people really upset just because I naturally grow facial hair. But, by everything else, by sex standards, I'm a woman. So, just I don't identify as one. So yeah, these things like this almost like bioessentialism that we're seeing is just misogyny because it's coming down to these ideas of very strict ideas of what gender is, what it means to present as a woman, what it means to present as a man. And thus it starts to harm everyone.
I want to bring up something here that it's often misogyny, but it's individualism, because this is just another thing that shows that individualism isn't really true in especially like in a capitalist economy. Like you're being told that you're individual, but you're also shunning people for being individual.
Mm-hmm.
So that happens on top of it. So it's like just the gender norms and stuff like that. Like if someone doesn't fit them, then they other them. So it's like, you don't care about individualism. You want conformity. So I don't know why they even talk about that stuff.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I know we've been talking for a while. I'm not sure exactly what our time's at, but I think it's unless anyone else has any other points they really want to bring up. I think a good way to end it is since especially because we're talking about our experiences with like comrades and things like that. What is something you would like to see more cis men in leftist organizing and communist spaces do to help combat misogyny?
All right, you go, Ash.
I got one. I got one. Oh my God. I want them to stop going on feminist panels and arguing with the opposition. I want them to fucking stop doing that. I hate it. I think it's so annoying. They talk over women who are trying to talk about misogyny and would just go right over them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, mine's probably the white knighting. That's the thing that irritates me the most. So just, hold back. I mean, it's what, like, don't do it publicly. Even if you feel the need, go, DM her and say, do you need my help? Like, you don't necessarily need to just jump in for them. Just, let the woman try to deal with the situation and let them let you know if they need your help.
Absolutely.
My last little piece of advice is going to be very simple. Listen to women. Just listen to them. Let the women cook. Let the femmes cook. Let the masked women cook. Let all of them cook, please. Non-binaries, because one thing I also found is that women, and especially a lot of minority groups in general, but women will be the first ones to sound the alarms on a lot of stuff. And a lot of people, even in leftist organizations, will not listen until it personally affects a man. And it's stop waiting for it to reach the people that you care about to hurt. Frankly, just listen to women. They are cooking. Just listen to them.
Yes. I would say all of y'all brought up great points. So I'm going to probably just round it off with organizing parties, all that stuff are not your dating pools. Women come to these things to do work. You should probably do it too. And secondly, I don't care how much you say you're a communist. If you have a wife, a partner, a family, and your partner, your femme presenting or woman partner is the one doing the dishes, doing the chores, helping raise the kids, doing all that stuff, you're not being a good communist and you're still falling for the patriarchy. Do better. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Yeah. All right.
Yay! We survived it.
We did
it. We survived it.
All right. Good night.
Good night,
everybody.